The email arrived at 10:14 p.m. The subject line was blank. The message itself just one sentence: "I've moved your inheritance into my personal account. It's better this way." No greeting, no explanation. Just that. Attached was a photo Lara on a balcony I didn't recognize, wineglass in hand, a man beside her. Beard, linen shirt, sunset over what looked like the Rockies. Her smile. It wasn't the one I knew. It was younger, sharper, the kind she hadn't given me in years. I didn't react at first. No shouting, no fists slamming the desk. I just closed the laptop and sat back in the chair. The condo was silent. Outside, the harbor lights blinked in and out of the fog, a fishing vessel rocking gently in the tide. The Christmas tree near the window still stood, though January had already begun. I stood, walked to the kitchen, and poured myself a glass of water. The tap was slow. I'd meant to call the plumber last week, never got around to it. As I leaned against the counter, my eyes landed on the old blueprint frame leaning against the wall, one of the last things Neela gave me before he passed. A railway bridge sketch from his early engineering days, penciled in the margins. Always double your tension checks. And your trust. I didn't need to double-check anything now. I'd seen enough. Lara had changed slowly, like water warming before a boil. First it was weekend retreats, then week-long digital detoxes. Her phone stayed face down, passwords updated. Questions about finances began to surface, soft at first, then pointed. "Do we really need so many accounts?" she'd asked over grilled halibut one night. Why not simplify? That was 3 months ago. I'd nodded, said I'd think about it. But I already had. Back in the living room, I reopened the laptop, read her email again. Still no salutation, no name, no shame. I typed 6 words. "Thanks for letting me know." Then I shut the lid for good that night and headed upstairs to the guest room. I didn't even glance at the master. Lara thought she'd stolen something, thought she was clever, decisive, bold. But here's the thing: I slept better that night than I had in months. And what she didn't know, what she couldn't possibly imagine, was this. She'd just triggered something I'd been building since the day I sensed she might try to take what was never hers. I woke to an unfamiliar quiet, the kind that doesn't just fill a room but weighs it down. No water running. No soft sounds of Lara moving around the kitchen, just light seeping through the blinds and the taste of dry metal in my mouth. The glass I'd poured the night before was still on the counter untouched. So was her absence. I made coffee stronger than usual and opened the old notebook Neela had left me years ago. His handwriting had faded on the inside cover, but I could still make out the words, "Trust begins with load and ends with what remains standing." I underlined it slowly, then drew a single line beneath it. Time to go back to the beginning. I was 13 when they told me my parents were gone. One of those freak highway blizzards near Hope swallowed their car. The lights were still on when a plow operator found them the next morning. The funeral passed in a blur of closed doors and murmured condolences. I remember the cold, the stiffness of the suit I'd borrowed, and the tall man who waited until the end, hands in his coat pockets, saying nothing until he walked me out. That was Neela Keats, my father's cousin, a structural engineer with calloused hands and an old pickup. We'd only met once years earlier at a summer picnic. He took me in. Neela's place was outside Kamloops, a steep-roofed house with more tools than furniture. He gave me the spare bedroom and never once told me to stop crying. But he didn't comfort either, not with words. He showed me how to use a level, how to sand with the grain, how to trust what pressure reveals. One night, I couldn't sleep. I'd been thinking about my mother's laugh. I found a note on my desk the next morning, scribbled in red ink on the back of a bridge inspection form. Stability is built, not inherited. Like bridges, or men. He never mentioned it again, but he left more like it hidden between books tucked inside old manuals, instructions disguised as affection, warnings disguised as care. I kept every single one. By 25, I had a degree in civil engineering, a fellowship under my belt, and a job offer from the city of Victoria. I moved with a duffel bag, a backpack of tools, and 2 boxes of Neela's marked-up blueprints. At first, I worked under a supervisor who hated anything salvageable. His motto was, "Rip it out, pave it over." I lasted a year. Then I left and started my own firm, small, cautious, obsessed with preservation. I liked the idea of making old things useful again. I bought a 2-story in James Bay. Nothing fancy. I did the floors myself and installed the deck in 3 weekends. Called Neela every Sunday. We talked about load distribution and beer. He was never soft, but he was always there. When he visited once, he tapped the side wall of my living room with a knuckle and nodded. "You're not stupid," he said. From him, that was love. I met Laura at a city-hosted seminar on sustainable design. She was the closing speaker, confident, graceful, the kind of woman who didn't just light up a room, she directed the wattage. She was talking about low-waste architecture and composting toilets. I was the guy who corrected a misquoted study in the Q&A. She caught me after, asked if I wanted to get tea. It moved fast after that. Lunch, then dinner, then a weekend on Salt Spring Island, where she wore linen and laughed in a way that made strangers turn. She called me still water. I called her weather. 3 years in, we were married. I designed our house like I would a long-span bridge. Clean lines, strong anchors. She added the throws, the diffusers, the perfectly imperfect mugs. Her following grew fast, green, living organic skincare, homemade bone broth. She rarely posted pictures of us. "I am the product," she'd say. "Gotta keep things clean." We didn't have kids, her choice mostly. I'd be a terrible mother, she joked, once laughing too hard. I laughed too back then. I loved her. Or maybe I loved who she let me be when she still looked at me like I mattered. For a while, it all worked. Laura and I had routines, morning walks, Sunday markets. She'd record reels in the kitchen while I fixed door hinges or planned next week's site visits. We hosted dinners with local produce and candlelight. Her following doubled, then tripled. She started saying things like partnerships and reach metrics. I didn't mind. I was proud of her. I never felt small beside her shine. I built the backdrop. She was the movement. She started calling me her compass, said I kept her centered. We didn't talk about kids anymore. That topic had folded into silence. Sometimes when she was on retreats, I'd find myself fixing small things just to fill the rooms. One night we danced in the kitchen to a song we'd never heard before. We didn't film it, didn't post it, just moved until the song ended. And in that quiet for a few beats, I thought maybe this is what holding on looks like. It was a Tuesday. I just wrapped a site inspection when I saw the missed call from a northern number. A man named Eli answered when I called back. Said he'd worked with Neela volunteer surveyors assessing an old pedestrian bridge in northern BC near a small First Nations community. The structure had been compromised. Winter thaw made the beams slick. Neela had gone ahead to check a suspect joint. No one saw him fall. They found him beneath the deck neck, broken on the rocks. It was fast, merciful Eli said. I flew out that night. The community was small, tight-knit kind. Someone had already built a makeshift memorial. Flowers. A photo of Neela in his orange vest. A child had drawn him with a giant pencil and called it the Fixer. Eli met me outside the lodge, handed me a folder. He said if anything happened, this was for you. Inside were pages of notes, estimates, sketches, calculations, and Neela's blocky script. No goodbye, just data. That was his way. I stood by the river alone that night. It was cold, the kind that cuts through your jacket, makes you forget to cry. I didn't need to. I already knew how grief moved it carved from underneath like water. Lara texted, "Are you okay? Should I come?" "Let me know if you need anything," I replied once. "Thanks. I'm okay." But I wasn't. The office was plain. Beige walls, flickering fluorescents, the kind of chairs that make you sit up straight. Neela had left me just under $600,000. It wasn't in stocks or volatile crypto. It was in a trust slow building tied to long-term municipal infrastructure bonds. Conservative, reliable, just like him. There was a letter, too, folded neatly beside the documents. His writing was still sharp, not shaky. "You know how to build. Now build something that protects, even when you're no longer standing beside it. That's the real work." I sat in my car after and read it again. Then again, until the ink blurred. That night, Lara made lentil stew and poured wine. She asked questions softly, carefully. Not just about how I was, but about the structure of the trust. Whether it was flexible, whether we could use some of it for a wellness lodge idea she'd been sketching. I said I'd think about it. And I did. But not in the way she hoped. I wanted to believe it was just stress. Lara's retreats grew longer. What used to be a weekend became a week, then 10 days. She said it was about deep immersion. I nodded. But she stopped posting. While away, no group photos, no food shots, no sunrise meditations. Just silence. She changed her passwords, claimed it was for brand security. Her phone never faced up anymore. Notifications came in silent flashes. One night, I passed her on the back patio. She was laughing the kind of laugh I hadn't heard in a long time, carefree, intimate. When she noticed me, her tone flattened. "Just Theo from the content team," she said. Slipped the phone into her robe. Theo had left her team 3 months earlier. I didn't push, just watched as she poured herself another glass of Pinot and changed the subject. When she got back from her next retreat, her skin smelled like a cologne I didn't own. Her playlist had new songs, ones I never heard her play before. She brought home a bottle of red I was allergic to. I logged into our shared cloud folder one evening. A file named Meal Plan. West had a recent timestamp. I opened it expecting grocery lists. Instead, I found screenshots of my financial accounts notes, scribbled in a margin trust access, Throssart confirmed. Ask Ezra retransfer path Fiesta 20%. I stared at the file, closed it, sat very still. She wasn't being careless. She was planning. Henry Gallo knocked the next afternoon. Our neighbor, former stonemason. Brings us bread every other week. "Lara, get back." "Okay," he asked, handing me a warm loaf wrapped in cloth. "She's back," I said, unsure what he meant. "Well, sorry if I'm out of line. I saw her getting dropped off a few nights ago. Tuesday. Tall guy. Beard. That wasn't you, was it?" "I was in Ottawa," I said, steady. Henry blinked. "Right. Just thought I'd mention it." I thanked him, took the bread, closed the door gently. That night I made a small black dot on the calendar. No label, just the dot. That night, I pulled out one of Neela's old blueprints. A suspension footbridge, dual supports, double redundancy, over-designed for safety, his kind of signature. I traced the lines, slowly letting the silence do its work. I thought about how he used to say, "We don't build to hold up weight. We build to catch the moment it fails." Then I opened my files, the encrypted ones, backups, alerts, triggers we'd put in place when setting up the trust. Everything was still intact, untouched. But now, I knew what to watch for, and more importantly, who. "You taught me to build strong," I whispered to Neela's old line work. "Now I have to make sure it stands when someone tries to tear it down." That week passed in perfect silence. No apology, no explanation, not even a question. Lara didn't text to check if I'd read her email, didn't call to follow up. She didn't ask about the house, our shared calendar, or the dog-eared book she always meant to finish. Nothing. And that silence told me more than words ever could. She believed she'd already won. She'd written the ending, cast herself as survivor, me as afterthought. But endings are architectural. They're built. And I'd spent my entire life learning to read weight before collapse. So I didn't panic. I printed the email, opened a new folder, titled it Phase 1. Jasper Chow had been Neela's financial advisor before he was mine. Young, quiet, meticulous, in the way that made people think he was older than he was. Neela trusted him, and Neela didn't trust easily. I called him from a prepaid phone at a payphone 3 blocks from my office. Paranoia. Maybe. But I didn't want any trace of what I was about to ask. Julian, he answered. This line isn't secure, I know, I said. I'm not asking for advice, I just need confirmation. Quietly. He waited. Has there been any activity, or attempted activity, on the trust account? Logins, access attempts, IPs, out of province, a longer pause. Then I'll need about an hour. I left the phone hanging and walked the harbor loop twice. He called back from a blocked number. 3 access attempts, he said. All failed security verification. The device tried answering backup questions but missed 2. When, 48 hours ago? Alberta-based IP, Echo Springs. Sound familiar? I didn't answer. He continued. Nothing was moved. But it's clear someone's trying to figure out how. And the trust's protective layers. Still holding. Triple redundant encryption. Irrevocable. And now, I've flagged it for alerts. You'll be notified if anything pings the system again. Thanks, Jasper. Julian, he said, his voice dropping. Should I be worried? I already am, I replied. I met Sylvia Ung in a building that looked like it had never heard of glass or marketing. Brick, narrow windows, 2 floors, no receptionist. She was the one Neela had trusted for 2 decades. When I stepped into her office, she didn't stand, just gestured to a chair and pushed her glasses up her nose. You don't waste time, she said. I don't have any to waste. I laid out the situation plainly. No names, no accusations, just facts. An irrevocable trust. A known party trying to access it without authorization. Logins, location, data device, mismatches. Sylvia took notes in a fountain pen that looked older than both of us. She didn't interrupt. When I finished, she set the pen down. If what you're saying is true, she said, we're not talking about misunderstanding or miscommunication. This is deliberate misrepresentation with intent to defraud. Criminal in the province of British Columbia. Absolutely. Attempted financial fraud. Possibly identity theft depending on how the personal data was sourced. I exhaled. She continued. The good news. The trust structure your uncle created protects the principal absolutely. But if you want a record of these attempts, if this escalates, we'll need to act now. What do you suggest? A full audit trail, external monitoring, independent redundancy. I can bring in a private server team that copies every packet of interaction tied to that trust in real time. And no one would know, not unless they were trying to bypass it. I nodded. Do it. Sylvia tapped her pen once. One more thing, she said. Do you want this documented as a preliminary claim of misconduct? Not yet. But soon. Back home, I started combing through our shared cloud folders again. We'd use them for everything: renovation plans, receipts, schedules, scanned documents. Lara preferred digital order. She said it helped declutter mental space. Ironic now. Inside a subfolder labeled Retreat Meal Designs, I found a trove of screenshots, my banking dashboards, trust account names, confirmation emails I didn't remember giving her access to. One file had handwritten annotations, a flowchart with arrows pointing from the trust fund to something she'd labeled Phase 2 Wellness Expansion. Echo. The arrow ended in a simple note. 20% buffer loss. Ask Ezra, Reversible Ezra. I didn't know the name, not yet. She'd planned this, documented it, hidden it in plain sight. I saved everything. Printed hard copies. Backed them up twice, once to a secure drive Jasper had prepped. Once on encrypted cloud storage. Sylvia connected me to, hosted on Canadian servers with data residency protection under PIPEDA. I left the originals untouched. Let her think I hadn't looked. People slip when they think no one's watching. That night, her name lit up my screen. Lara. 8:17 p.m. Did you get my note? I didn't reply. 8:41 p.m. You could at least say something. I didn't want it to go this way. Still nothing. 9:03 p.m. We've been disconnected for a long time. This was just inevitable. The message wasn't about guilt. It was control disguised as grief. She wanted to frame the story before I could respond. Rewrite the roles. Victim, martyr, strategist. 9:26 p.m. I hope you won't make this uglier than it has to be. I typed. Deleted. Typed again. Then finally sent. Let's keep things civil. That was all. Enough to stall. To study what move came next. The next morning I met Jasper in person for the first time since the pandemic began. We sat in a tucked-away booth at a diner in Oak Bay facing the wall phones powered off. I want to move any liquid assets out of co-managed zones, I said. Anything with even a shared signature. He nodded. We'll reallocate to your individual account with limited visibility. Still Canadian registered. Protected under BC's separation laws. Can you create parallel shadow logs already done? Next, I reviewed my will, rechecked property deeds, and confirmed my personal accounts were only under my SIN. I signed paperwork to remove Lara's access to my professional line of credit, quietly, through a banking contact who owed me a favor. Every change was traceable legal and in full compliance with Canada's Family Property Act. I wasn't running. I was fortifying. Because defense isn't built when you're under attack. It's built before. 3 days later, I got a message from an unlisted number. You're making this harder than it has to be. No name, no context. But I knew. It wasn't Lara's style, too blunt, too careless. This was someone who thought they were protecting her. Or maybe someone she thought was protecting her. I didn't respond, just took a screenshot and forwarded it to Sylvia, with the subject line, Potential Co-Conspirator. 5 minutes later, she replied, We'll trace the IP. Don't engage. I opened a new folder on my desktop, titled it, Echo Contact, Unverified. Inside, I logged the number timestamp tone. I included a note. If this goes legal, I want chain of contact preserved. I saved a backup copy to an offsite cloud, Canadian jurisdiction only. Whoever he was, he'd made his first mistake. He assumed I was still reacting. I wasn't. I was recording. The next morning, Sylvia called me directly. No email, no message. Just a cold, clipped voice over a secure line. They tried again. Same IP different. 2 new ones. Same location, Echo Springs. 3 attempts. All blocked. But this time, they bypassed basic login, went after server-side protocols. Did they get anything? No. But they got aggressive. We have logs, timestamps, device fingerprints. And she paused a failed attempt through your home network last month. My stomach went still. She was here when that happened. Yes. And it proves local access. The logs match your home router's MAC address. It's damning, Julian. I didn't speak, just nodded into the silence. Anything else? I asked. One more thing. The trust system flagged a transfer simulation attempt. Someone entered all the credentials correctly, but halted before confirmation. They were testing, seeing how far they could go. She's rehearsing, I said quietly. Planning a clean run. Yes, keep the system live. Double backups. Notify the legal compliance team. I want this airtight. Already done, she said. We're ahead. but not by much. The silence had changed. It wasn't stillness anymore. It buzzed like power lines after a storm, something coursing through the air looking for a place to strike. Every part of me was alert, braced. Lara hadn't said another word since our last exchange, but the systems had. The logs kept whispering, "Someone's coming." Not yet, but soon. I'd always thought betrayal would feel hot, boiling, loud, dramatic. But this was cold, methodical. The slow grind of a structure giving way. And the part that made my hands shake wasn't that she tried to take the money. It was how close she'd gotten. Sylvia's office had added a new screen, bigger, real-time logs. The software she'd installed flagged every login attempt, every failed ping, every mouse movement on the Trust interface. And now we had confirmation. Echo Springs, she said, pointing to a line of entries. Not just the town, same lodging IP block, same device ID as 3 previous attempts. She clicked open a subfolder. Device fingerprint. Browser history attempt. Attempted security question. Where did you go to high school? Answer entered St. Elias. Correct, because Lara knew that. I'd told her once years ago over breakfast. I felt my jaw tighten. They're escalating, Sylvia said. No longer probing. Now they're rehearsing. What does that mean? I asked, though. I knew. They're dry running a transfer, seeing how close they can get without tripping the alarms. And they haven't yet. Not quite, but they're brushing up against the boundary. We logged 3 fails and 1 aborted confirmation attempt. She paused, then added, We traced the device registration. The tablet used, it was linked to your shared Apple ID 3 months ago. Her name's still on the recovery email. That was it. The last layer of doubt cracked. Not just assumption, not just inference. Proof. And yet, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt stripped. Everything I'd built around trust, every shared account, every gesture of openness, had become a weapon in someone else's hands. Later that night, I opened a Drive folder we hadn't touched in over a year. Shared docs, renovation 2022. It should have been blueprints, invoices, paint swatches. Instead, it was a graveyard of intentions and a roadmap of her plan. I found a PDF titled IDAuthJK.PDF. Inside was a photo of my driver's license front and back. I had never scanned it, never uploaded it. Then a PNG file screenshot of a face scan login from my mobile banking app. I sat back. Somewhere between trust and routine, she'd harvested everything. Quietly. Repeatedly. With the precision of someone who thought she'd never get caught. Another file. Handwritten. Not her. Handwriting is a Ezra. Can we simulate transfer first? Does Julian receive email notification or not Ezra? The same name from before. Still no face, no role, just presence. At the bottom of the folder, an image, low res, zoomed from CCTV or phone camera. It was me walking out of the credit union 3 weeks ago. Captioned, he went in. Check if routing forward matches what we found. She'd been tracking me. I wasn't just being betrayed, I was being surveilled. My own life was now evidence. I stood on Henry's porch the next morning with 2 coffees. He answered in his usual wool cardigan eyes, sharp behind bifocals. I need to ask you something, I said, handing him the drink. Shoot. I pulled out my phone and showed him a photo screen-grabbed from a yoga studio's about page. A man. Tall, bearded, slight smirk, linen button-up. Beside his name, Jason Grant, founder Breath and Form Wellness. Echo Springs, AB. Henry squinted, took one slow sip. Yeah, he said. That's him. Are you sure I've seen him 5, maybe 6 times? Same car. He'd drop her off, hang back in the driver's seat. They didn't kiss or anything. But they looked like what he met my eyes, like people with nothing left to hide. I nodded. No further questions. But as I walked back toward my car, something shifted. Not just jealousy, not betrayal, exposure. Someone had stood on my porch while I was gone, with my wife. And no one, not even Henry, thought it was strange. Back home, I dug deeper. Jason Grant had a public LinkedIn, mostly inactive, former investment broker, left finance 5 years ago after what he called a values realignment. Now ran a chain of yoga retreats focused on restorative masculinity. Gross. His business had expanded rapidly over the last 2 years, especially after a new brand partner joined from BC. Initials Alem. I found video clips. Him and Lara co-hosting webinars, interviews, shared podcast episodes recorded off-grid. They spoke in tones that sounded almost cultic-coded language about unburdening legacy systems, redirecting personal wealth toward conscious structures. Then I found a property listing. Echo Springs AB, a refurbished wellness compound purchased under a numbered company. Directors Jason Grant, Lara Moreau. Closed 3 months ago. My hands were steady, but my spine burned. This wasn't spontaneous. This wasn't love. It was a launch plan. I stared at the purchase agreement, the studio names, the phrases they used: architecting emotional capital, sovereign community ecosystems. It was financial philosophy twisted into intimacy. Or maybe intimacy used as leverage. I couldn't tell where one ended and the other began. I switched windows, opened my banking alerts, everything still untouched. But now I could see how narrow the margin was, how many details they'd already gathered, how prepared they were, and worst of all, how certain they felt. The phone rang at 11:12 p.m. I let it ring once, twice, 3 times. Then I picked up. Her voice was calm, almost soft. I thought I'd hear from you by now. I didn't answer. I assume you've seen the message, the one where you stole my inheritance and smiled about it. A beat. That's not what happened. Then what did she exhaled? Long, practiced. You don't understand the context. Enlighten me. It's not just about the money, Julian. It's about values. About putting resources where they can do something. Not just sit and rot in a legacy fund. You mean not sit in my name? You were never going to use it. Not really. You'd just preserve it. Like you do everything. Even pain. The way she said that, like diagnosis. Like manipulation dressed in therapy. You're doing something dangerous, I said. No. I'm doing something brave. You're the one reacting out of fear. Fear of what? Losing control. I laughed. One hard breath. You've already lost, she added, quieter. Dragging it out doesn't serve anyone. You sound like him. Who, Jason? Silence. You don't know him, she said finally. You're right. But I know enough. The silence grew heavier. Then she spoke again, faintly clipped. I was going to offer something. A compromise. But if this is the tone you're choosing, I'm not choosing tone. I'm choosing fact. Click. She hung up. And in the dark silence that followed, I felt it. She's not done. She's doubling down. And the next move won't be conversation. The next morning, I didn't call. Didn't text. Instead, I printed everything. The screen captures. IP logs. Screenshots from the renovation folder. The photo Henry confirmed. Copies of trust login attempts. The Ezra notes. I compiled it into a clean binder. Indexed. Timestamps in bold. Sylvia's firm had a private Droppoint encrypted server on Canadian soil. I uploaded the entire folder there. Then I sent her a short email. Phase 2. Confirmed. Ready to escalate. She responded within minutes. Received. Solid case for misconduct. Full paper trail. Ready to proceed under civil and criminal umbrellas. I sat still after reading it. This wasn't theory anymore. It was chargeable. What she'd done wasn't just morally ugly. It was legally radioactive. And now the clock was ticking on her side. Because the second a lawyer sees what we had, they'll either run or try to contain the fallout. I was ready for both. 2 days later, Sylvia called. "You'll want to hear this. I pressed record. Just in case. She's retained legal counsel. Name's Graham Dexter." I paused. "You're kidding. Wish I were. He's slippery. Disbarred once. Reinstated after arbitration. Reputation for creative resolution, meaning he cuts deals by scaring clients into compliance, twists narratives, finds mutual misunderstanding angles. He's already requested an emergency hearing. Did he see the logs I sent them? Twice? He acknowledged receipt. No comment yet. Of course not. That wasn't his play. He'd want a meeting, an off-record exchange, something he could reframe later. I asked, do we attend? Sylvia paused. Yes, but we document everything. Later that day, I got an email from Dexter, formally polite, suggesting we find a middle path to preserve dignity on both sides. I almost laughed. He wanted dignity. After attempted financial theft, after surveillance, after a fake partnership plan with a man pretending to run a yoga business. Dignity. Not today. The meeting was set in a neutral space glass conference room, 3rd floor of a law building downtown. I arrived first. Sylvia came with a box. Inside every file, every log, every email. Dated. Cross-referenced. Dexter walked in like it was just another day. He didn't speak right away. Just smiled, opened his notes, and said, "Perhaps we can start with an open conversation." Sylvia cut him off. "Let's not waste time. These are the documents. You'll see attempted access on a protected, irrevocable trust. Fraudulent behavior. Proof of collusion." She slid the binder across. He glanced down. His smile slipped, then returned tight this time. Masked. He said, "My client acknowledges some personal tension. But she insists the assets in question were jointly discussed." I interrupted. "Did she tell you about the shadow account she opened in Alberta under a shell number company?" His eyes flicked to Sylvia. She opened the last file. "Here's the lease. The wellness studio. Joint signatures. All using Julian's data without consent." Dexter didn't speak for a long time. "Then I think perhaps we should reconvene." "We won't," I said. "Excuse me. We're done negotiating. Unless your client wishes to return everything and sign a non-disclosure, this goes to court." The folder sat between us. Hot. Heavy. Waiting to ignite. I left the meeting with my jaw locked, the binder under my arm, and a quiet thud in my chest. Dexter had seen enough. His silence was proof. But silence doesn't mean surrender. It means recalibration. And I knew Laura wouldn't go quietly, not after this. The weight of exposure had shifted. Her camp wasn't blind anymore. They were cornered. And desperate people in corners don't retreat. They strike. I didn't go home right away. I walked the city blocks like a man tracing fault lines, knowing full well one of them was about to crack. When I finally slept, it was with one thought circling, she's not done. Sylvia's number lit up at 2:14 a.m. I was awake, reading, waiting. I answered on the first ring. "They made another attempt," she said. My fingers tensed around the phone. What kind deep access? This wasn't phishing or login probing. They initiated a back-end protocol admin level, not through the trust system directly, but through the hosting server. I blinked. How is that even possible? They tried to breach the firewall from a third-party client. Based on the pattern they were using, proxy servers routed through Europe. But the point of origin still pings, Alberta. Echo Springs. Yes, she took a breath. "Julian, they used a data scraper script. If we hadn't had a triple-layer monitor on file callouts, it would have triggered access to metadata, contact lists, location logs, They wanted to know where I was. They wanted to erase you from the system. I stood up. My mind raced, but my voice stayed level. What was actually accessed? Nothing, she said quickly. We blocked it mid-execution. But we logged everything. And Julian, say it. They installed the script using a recovery link, which was only ever sent to one email address 6 months ago. To her inbox. It's proof she planted the back door. I didn't speak for several seconds, not out of shock anymore. That stage had passed. Now it was a deeper ache, a slow burn sting behind the ribs, a realization not just that I'd been betrayed, but that I'd been studied, like a system, a fortress, a lockbox waiting to be picked open. Anything else, I asked. There was one more flag. Go on. Someone tried to access your health records through the shared insurance portal, claimed to be your spouse, failed security twice. It's logged. I stared at the floor. Why my health data? Was she building a case? Or anticipating something I hadn't yet considered? Sylvia answered the silence. We've initiated lockdown across all interfaces. Credit alerts, passport flags, SIN monitoring. Nothing goes in or out now without biometric confirmation. Thank you. And Julian, this is no longer just a civil issue. I know. The call ended. The room stayed still. I walked to the kitchen, poured a glass of water. Outside, the wind moved the trees, but the street was quiet. Not a car. Not a sound. Inside, I felt it. The line had been crossed. This wasn't about hurt feelings or dissolving a marriage. This was sabotage. And the woman I once built a life with. She'd rehearsed every step. She just hadn't expected I'd notice. I turned off the lights, walked toward the study, opened the safe, pulled out the file marked Phase 3. Lara had made her move. Now it was my turn. The silence had changed shape again. It wasn't stillness anymore. It was suspense. Heavy. Hanging in the corners of every room. I no longer moved like a man trying to stay calm. I moved like someone waiting for the final blow. I didn't ask what would come next. I asked how close it was already. The binder on my desk was full. The backup drives encrypted. The files filed. The facts fixed in place. But facts don't stop fire. They just give it direction. When I stepped into Sylvia's office that morning, she didn't offer coffee or sit. She simply locked the door behind me and said, "It's no longer a family matter." The phrase hit like a gavel, and I knew this was no longer about betrayal. It was about justice, and how far someone would go to escape it. Sylvia slid a folder across the desk. Logo embossed in black FinTrack, Financial Transactions and Reports Analysis Center of Canada. Your trust company's compliance team submitted everything she said. The system logs the breach attempt, the metadata attack. And FinTrack classified the behavior as structured financial manipulation with criminal intent. I flipped open the folder. Inside was a letter addressed to Sylvia's firm. We are opening an investigation into the fraudulent access attempts tied to Mr. Julian Knox's irrevocable trust account. Based on digital forensic evidence provided this falls within the scope of financial crime under Canadian federal law. My breath didn't catch. It landed, like a stone in the gut. They've notified the RCMP, I asked. She nodded. This is no longer just internal. This is Crown level. If they push it further, it could escalate to conspiracy to commit fraud. And she doesn't even know yet. She will. I stared at the page. The legal language was cold, precise. And yet, every word pointed to something warm, once a conversation over wine, a shared login, a lazy Sunday where she asked about updating our financial plan. I clenched my hands. Let go. Sylvia kept speaking. Calm, methodical. We'll mirror their submission with a civil filing. That gives us access to discovery early. She'll retaliate, I said. She already did. This is the response. I took a breath, looked up. Is there a way to keep it quiet? Some, until indictments are considered. But if her side escalates again, there's no more shield. The folder between us felt heavier now, not just paper. History, evidence, and consequence. I left Sylvia's office with the folder still warm in my hands, not metaphorically. Physically warm from her desk lamp, from my palms, from the heat of what was now formally criminal. Outside, the wind cut sharper than I remembered, but the air was clearer too. That's what truth does. It doesn't heal first. It strips. Then it stings. And as I crossed the street toward my car, a thought slipped in, not loud, but certain. If Lara's mask is off, what about the man she built her empire with? I didn't wait until morning. I pulled out my phone, opened the research folder again, and started digging. And that's when the cracks widened. Jason Grant's LinkedIn was sparse. The usual bio, former finance current facilitator, from wealth to wellness. Photos of meditation circles, group retreats. Hashtags like sovereign healing and Jiangpo, masculine realignment. But one post caught my eye, a blog share 2 years old. The link was broken, so I used the Wayback Machine. The cached article opened with a headline that made my stomach tighten. From broker to being why I left. Institutional banking before they took my license. The author Jason Grant. Written under a pen name, but his photo remained. Paragraph by paragraph, the piece unraveled his past. He'd worked for First North Equity, a boutique firm in Vancouver. Was part of a high-risk investment wing, what the article called portfolio innovation. Translation: gray zone money, hedge vehicles, anonymous donor pathways. Then came the investigation. 2 years under the microscope, he wrote. Was never charged. But they wanted blood, and I wasn't willing to play martyr. He left before disbarment could stain his record. Rebranded, reinvented. But the trail never vanished. I followed a comment link, someone referencing Jason in a Reddit thread under R Whistleblower Finance. There, buried under a dozen layers of indignant rage and theory, was a small file share CRA complaint, suspected shell laundering through holistic cooperatives. Director flagged Jason Grant. The report had no conclusion, just an open status. But a follow-up appeared last month. Activity referred to provincial enforcement for further review. My mouth went dry. I cross-checked that with the Alberta Business Registry. Jason's current entity, Echo Form Collective, was listed as a non-profit spiritual cooperative, but under assets, 4 properties. 1 retreat center, a Tesla registered under his name. And guess what? The donor for his expansion phase last year, El Moreau. I sat back, hands flat on the desk. So that's what this was. Not just love, not just betrayal. It was logistics. Jason didn't fall for my wife. He recruited her. And together, they tried to turn my inheritance, Neela's life work, into the launch pad for a cleaned-up criminal operation. I stared at the screen until the edges blurred. Then I saved every file. Named the folder Reconstruction Evidence. Tier 2. She'd built a new life with him. Now I'd dismantle it piece by piece. The pieces didn't just fit, they locked. Her emails, his past, their project in Echo Springs. It was all a single structure disguised as separate rooms. But Jason's scaffolding was cracking. And Lara. She didn't even know the floor beneath her had begun to shake until the call came. Sylvia texted me at 7:48 a.m., 2 words only. It started. I called her back immediately. She didn't need to say much. Lara had received a formal summons. RCMP had flagged her name in relation to 2 active cases, unauthorized digital access of protected trust accounts. Suspicion of collusion with a non-profit linked to a laundering probe. She hasn't been arrested, Sylvia clarified. Not yet. This is an investigative interview. But she's rattled. How do you know I asked? She tried calling me 3 times. I blinked. She knows you represent me? Exactly. What did she say? Sylvia smiled dry. That she was willing to cooperate fully, and wasn't aware Jason's business had any irregularities. Of course not. I pictured her pacing her rented apartment, Jason silent, or already gone, panic sinking into the creases of her face. She asked if you would consider withdrawing your civil claim. I almost laughed. Instead, I said, let her talk. Let her explain everything. To them. She will. Tomorrow. 10 a.m. downtown Calgary. If she fails to appear, they escalate. And Jason radio silence. But he's been flagged too. Good. Let him feel what silence tastes like now. I ended the call and sat still. The same stillness as when you wait for a building to implode, the charge already placed. The countdown already ticking. After the call, I didn't move for a while. Not out of hesitation, but out of calculation. This wasn't the time for fire. It was the time for precision. Lara would spin. Jason would vanish. But what neither of them could erase was evidence. And now every inch of that evidence was indexed, cataloged, and prepped for the next step. I didn't want revenge. I wanted resolution. And for that, I needed one final move. 3 days later, Sylvia and I stood in front of a mahogany desk inside the Alberta Superior Court filing office. A clerk in pale green sleeves took the envelope from Sylvia's hands, stamped it twice, and nodded. Filed. Just like that, everything changed. We had officially launched the civil lawsuit Knox v. Moreau and Grant. Fraudulent misrepresentation, unauthorized access, and attempted misappropriation of protected trust assets. The paperwork was as clean as it was damning. 15 exhibits, 3 affidavits, IP logs, witness testimony, financial statements, all built on what Lara had hoped no one would ever notice. And now, there was no more hiding. On the way out, Sylvia handed me a smaller envelope. Your choice, she said. Inside was a letter addressed to Lara written in my name. Not rage, not plea. Just 6 paragraphs. Lara, I'm writing not as someone you betrayed, but as someone you once trusted. You and I both know what happened wasn't confusion or coincidence. We built something, then you buried it while smiling, while pretending. What you do from here is up to you. But know this. There is a path forward that doesn't include humiliation or prison. It requires truth, documentation, return of what was taken. Agree to the terms, and I withdraw the suit. Decline, and I see you in court. Sylvia folded it neatly. If she has even an ounce of self-preservation left, she said she'll take it. I wasn't so sure, but the offer had been made, and that was more than she ever gave me. The letter was delivered by courier, signature required. I watched the notification ping my inbox, received by L. Moreau. 10:37 p.m. No response came that day, not the next either. Until Thursday night, my phone rang. Unknown number. I didn't answer. Then a message followed. Please. Just coffee. 1 hour. No lawyers. I stared at the screen. Not because I was tempted, but because I knew guilt doesn't call lawyers. But fear does. We met at a cafe halfway between my condo and what used to be her yoga studio. Neutral ground. Public. Safe. She arrived 5 minutes late, coat too thin for the wind sunglasses unnecessary after dark. I stood. Didn't hug her. She sat. Didn't order. Thank you, she said. Voice small. I nodded once. For what? For agreeing to this. I know you didn't have to. She paused, bit her lip, and finally looked at me. I don't know where to start. Then don't rehearse, I said. Just talk. Her eyes filled fast. She didn't wipe them. Let them sit there like proof. I didn't plan it like this. Not at first. You planned something. She nodded. Not the stealing. Not everything. It started as distance, then resentment. Then, I met him. Jason. A single tear fell. I thought he saw me. He did. As a mark. That hit. She flinched. I was stupid. No. You were calculated. That's worse. She looked down. I know I hurt you, but I didn't know it would go this far. You didn't think you'd get caught. She swallowed hard. I thought, you loved me too much to ever suspect. That silenced us both. Finally, she asked, do you really want to drag this out, lawyers' court articles? I didn't want any of this. But here we are. Another pause. She tried again. Softer. What if I return what I took, sign whatever you want? You've had that offer in writing. You ignored it. I panicked. Jason told me to hold out. I blinked slowly. So this is still his voice I'm hearing. No. Her hand touched the table, then retreated. This is me. Finally. I looked at her eyes, puffy, guilt thick, but still too many years too late. And still a piece of me mourned what we could have been, what we almost were. But the rest of me, the rest was done mourning. We sat in silence long enough for the server to refill our water and retreat. She watched me like she was hoping for softness, for cracks, but I had none left. Not for her. When I finally spoke, I did so the way you fold a document before filing it away. Neat. Permanent. Done. I believe you're sorry, I said. Her face flickered. Hope, relief. I shook my head. But I also believe you're sorry you got caught. Julian, I know what you did. I know when you started. I know how many times you covered your tracks. You didn't trip into this. You built it. She looked away. I didn't know about Jason's past, she whispered. But you knew mine. You knew about Neela, about the trust, about what it meant to me. I leaned forward, voice even, and you tried to gut it from the inside. Tears fell again, silent. I thought you were distant, she said, that you were more in love with your work than with me. Maybe I was, I said, but I never lied, never stole. Never made you feel small to feel big. She blinked. You really won't forgive me. I breathed slowly. This isn't about forgiveness, I said. It's about consequence. I lost everything. No. You gave it away. Bit by bit. Lie by lie. I stood. She did too, but slower, like her body knew something her mind was resisting. You could still withdraw the claim, she tried. You could still face 5 years if this escalates federally, I countered. And I won't be the one pushing it. Your actions already did. Another long silence. Then this is it, she asked. It was it a long time ago. We're just catching up. I handed her a small white envelope. She didn't open it. It's not money, I said. It's the list of things you left behind. You have 1 week. She clutched it like it might break her fingers. I loved you, she said, voice breaking. I did too. Once. But love doesn't survive this. I walked out. Didn't look back. Didn't need to. 1 week later, a moving truck idled in front of my building for less than 20 minutes. A single box. 2 suitcases. No knock. No note. No last glance. By the time I came down, the truck was gone. Inside the box, an old mug, a scarf she never wore, and a photograph I didn't remember taking us in Montreal snow on her eyelashes, me laughing at something now forever forgotten. I placed it face down in the bin. Some endings don't deserve memorial. That night, I walked through my apartment slowly, room by room, light switch by light switch. When I reached the window, I paused. The city didn't look different, but I did. I wasn't broken, wasn't bitter, just done. And in that stillness, I whispered the final words of a marriage I had once built, brick by brick. This time, the foundation won't crack. Then I turned off the light. The silence was different now. Not loaded, not tense, just whole. There's a kind of quiet that arrives after rupture, not the absence of noise, but the absence of need. No explanations to prepare, no traps to anticipate, no shoes to check for lies. That quiet. The kind where your own breath no longer sounds like an alarm. That weekend I didn't make plans, didn't text anyone, didn't scroll. I just listened to the hum of the fridge, to the creak of my own spine when I stretched too far, to the space between sighs mine, and how for the first time in months they didn't end in clenched teeth. The crisis was over, not solved, not erased, but contained. Now came the part most people never talk about. Not the betrayal, not the justice, the after. I started with the kitchen, not because it mattered more, but because it held the most ghosts. The drawer by the fridge still had her mismatched tea strainers, the ones I pretended to like. One by one, I dropped them into a cardboard box, labeled it, in Sharpie Donate, Do Not Reopen. In the cupboard above, I found 2 mugs, his and hers. She'd kept them hidden behind a stack of cookbooks. Jason's handwriting was on the bottom of one, 4L Warm Mornings. I didn't throw it. I crushed it in a towel so the porcelain wouldn't scatter. In the bathroom, her robe still hung behind the door. I folded it. In the bedroom, her drawer was half full, lotion scarves, 1 earring missing its pair. I didn't cry. Not because I was strong, because crying requires hope, and I had none left for what we were. In the closet, a shoebox tucked under a folded blanket stopped me. Inside our first theater ticket stub, a grocery list in my handwriting, a photo of us at Peggy's Cove, wind destroying her hair, both of us laughing. I stared at it. At us. At how easy it is to lie with pictures. Then I closed the box and placed it in the same bin as the mugs, not out of cruelty, but out of clarity. She chose to leave long before she physically did. This was me choosing not to let her stay in pieces. By mid-afternoon, the apartment echoed. Less clutter, less perfume, less pretending. I vacuumed twice, wiped the baseboards, opened the windows. Fresh air isn't a metaphor, it's a requirement. When the sun dipped low, I lit 1 candle, sandalwood, not her favorite, and stood in the center of the room. I whispered out loud like a prayer. You don't live here anymore. Then I sat on the floor, alone, not lonely, just beginning. The next morning, I took the long way to the office, not out of nostalgia, out of necessity. Grief hides in familiar places, corners of stairwells, coffee rings on drafting tables, and I needed to see if I could still stand in those places without folding. So I parked on the street instead of the garage, walked past the bakery Lara used to rave about, and unlocked the door to my studio. For the first time in months, I stepped inside without flinching. The smell hit first cedar and graphite. My assistant had left a fresh pot of coffee jazz playing low on the speaker. Nothing dramatic, just life. Continuing. The models on the far wall stood unchanged, miniature versions of the buildings I once obsessed over precision light flow. One had her initials carved in the corner of its base. She'd helped pick the tile palette back when we still shared ideas instead of passwords. I didn't touch it. I walked past. To the back room, my drafting space. The blinds were drawn. The table was clean. But in the center lay something I'd forgotten existed. My first concept sketch for the Moreau Center. The wellness complex she'd dreamed of. The one we never broke ground on. The one Jason later reimagined. The lines were soft human, rounded thresholds, sliding walls, open-air flow inspired by Japanese gardens. Looking at it now, I didn't feel pride. I felt theft. Not because she took the project, but because I had once drawn love into concrete, and she'd paved over it with lies. Still, The structure held. The design didn't break just because we did. I sat, picked up a pencil, started shading an old line just to see if my hand remembered. It did. 10 minutes passed, then 20. I wasn't correcting. I was reclaiming. Somewhere in the middle of the page, I added a note in the margin, designed for healing, not hiding. Then I stood, rolled the blueprint, and placed it in a fresh tube. Labeled it, "For the Foundation." Because not all buildings are made of brick. Some begin with forgiveness, and blueprints can be rewritten. I didn't plan to text her, but after rolling up the blueprint, I did. "Coffee, just us. No legalese," she replied in under a minute. Name the time. We met at the same corner spot where Laura once pitched her very first business plan. This time, the conversation wasn't about contracts, lawsuits, or leverage. This time, it was about Neela. And the parts of his story I'd never told anyone, not even Laura. "He used to eat boiled potatoes with mustard," I said. Sylvia blinked. "Excuse me, Mr. Neela. Every night during winter." Called it fuel for thinkers. Said anyone who overcomplicated dinner probably overcomplicated life. She laughed. Sounds like someone hard to argue with. He wasn't warm, not openly. But he showed up. Every school play, every exam result. Sat there in that old wool coat like he didn't care. But I caught him smiling. Sylvia sipped her drink. "Why'd he leave everything to you?" I paused. "Because I stayed. Stayed. When my parents died, other relatives offered condolences. He offered me a room, rules, expectations, and a desk by the window. You were what, 14? I nodded. He didn't treat me like a victim. He treated me like a draft, unshaped but promising." Sylvia leaned in. "You two ever say it, that he was proud, not in words. But when he handed me the key to his investment file right before his second stroke, he said, 'What's earned should be built, not burned.' And now you've built a foundation in his name." I swallowed. "It's not enough. But it's real," she said softly. "And that's more than most people manage." I looked out the window. Snow had started again. Just soft enough to feel like forgiveness. The envelope arrived on a Tuesday. Cream-colored. Handwritten. No return address, just a neat line across the top to the trustees of the Neela Foundation. Inside a folded sheet of lined paper. No printed letterhead. No email trail. Just this: "Dear Mr. D'Arcy. My name is Tasha Bennett. I'm 17. I live in Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan. I lost my dad when I was 9, and my mom works night shifts at the care home to keep things going. I wasn't going to apply for university. Not because I didn't want to go, but because I didn't think I could. Then I got a call from the Neela Foundation. You picked me. I didn't know who Mr. Neela was. So I asked my guidance counselor. She said he was a man who believed in quiet people who do hard things. That sounded like my dad. That's who I want to be. I'm going to study architecture at UBC next fall, not because I want to build fancy buildings, but because I want to build safe spaces, like the one my dad gave me, and now like the one this scholarship gives me. Thank you. I'll make it count." Tasha, I read it twice, then a third time. No polish, no performance, just truth. Mr. Neela would have liked her. Probably wouldn't have said so, but he'd have nodded. Just once. Then told her to read the bylaws of the city zoning board before drawing anything with curves. I placed the letter on my desk, next to the blueprint tube I'd marked "For the Foundation." And for the first time in months, I felt it. Not revenge, not survival. Legacy. Saturday night, the city moved without me. Downstairs, laughter from the pub across the street. The rumble of the streetcar. Somewhere, someone burning garlic. I stayed in, not to avoid the world, but to meet myself again. I pulled the old sketchbook from the top shelf of my closet, the one Mr. Neela gave me after I was accepted into architecture school. Every good builder starts with blank paper, he'd said. Draw what matters before the world tells you what sells. The first pages were messy, childish, full of ambition unshaped by failure. Then came the middle Lara's early studios, floor plans wrapped in hope, designs filled with her name in the margins. Then the pages turned colder. Notes in rushed handwriting, revisions done at 2 a.m. I reached the last page. Blank. I stared at it for a long time, not out of fear, out of respect. Then I wrote 4 words at the bottom, small and clean, still standing, still designing. I closed the book, not to end it, but to make space for something new. Then I stood, turned off the light, and sat by the window. The city glowed in scattered orange. It didn't know me, but I was here, and I was ready. The movers arrived just after 9 a.m. They were fast, efficient, and didn't ask questions. Exactly what I needed. I'd already packed most of the boxes, kept labels simple. Keep, donate, archive, trash. The walls looked strange without the frames, not empty. Relieved, I walked through each room one last time, not to reminisce, but to check for loose ends. In the bathroom, I left a note for the new tenants. The hot water's slow on winter mornings. Be patient. In the kitchen drawer, I tucked a handwritten recipe, my version of Mr. Neela's mustard potatoes. Maybe someone else would find comfort there too. Then I locked the front door. No looking back, just a quiet exhale as the latch clicked shut. My new place was a loft, smaller, cleaner. Sunlight poured in through exposed brick windows. No curtains, no decorations yet, and no plans to rush. I unpacked only what I needed: a coffee maker, 2 mugs, my sketchbook, and the rolled blueprint from the foundation. No more artifacts of a life that no longer fit. The rest, gone. Or given. I didn't need to fill space to feel whole. Somewhere between goodbye and here, I'd learned lightness is a form of strength. The check arrived 6 months after the court date. 99,310. No note, no signature, just the number. And silence. I didn't hesitate. The next morning, I met with the foundation accountant and signed the transfer papers. Every cent went into the Neela Fund's growth portfolio. Let it do more than sit, I said. Let it multiply into futures. The advisor nodded. It will. There was a sense of poetry in it, though I didn't need poetry anymore. Just progress. It wasn't about forgiving Lara, or forgetting. It was about reclaiming what mattered, and putting it somewhere useful. That check didn't carry closure. I did. The second scholarship recipient was named Naveen Shah, a 19-year-old from Thunder Bay who'd deferred school for 2 years to care for his grandmother. His application essay wasn't long. Just one sentence stood out. Design is hope made physical. I flew up for the award ceremony. He didn't know I was coming. When they called his name, his hands shook, not from nerves, but disbelief. After the photos and applause, I approached quietly. "Mr. Darcy," he said, eyes wide. I smiled. "Julian's fine. He looked younger than in his photo. But his eyes held that same fire I remembered in myself, the year Mr. Neela handed me a sketchbook." "I don't know what to say," Naveen murmured. "Then say, 'Thank you with your work,'" I said. "And when it's your turn, pass it on." He nodded. Hard. And in that moment, I didn't feel old. I felt in place. Back in Toronto, the air felt different. Not cleaner, but clearer. The second scholarship had been awarded. The fund was growing, and I wasn't stuck. That night, as I sat by the window sketching floor plans for a seniors co-housing project, a message arrived. Unexpected, unforced, and just open enough to say yes. The message came on a rainy Wednesday. "Hi, Julian. Sylvia mentioned your name. I'm hosting a small gathering. Friday writers, architects, misfits. Come if you'd like. No pressure. Clara. I didn't know her, but I knew the tone. Not urgent, not intrusive, just open. Friday arrived faster than expected. I almost canceled twice. But then I remembered what Sylvia said at the cafe weeks ago. Legacy is important, but so is life after. So I went. The loft was warm, lit with soft bulbs strung between bookshelves. People laughed in quiet corners. Someone played piano. Clara greeted me with a nod, no name tag needed. You're taller than she said. I chuckled. She warned you, she endorsed you. That night I didn't talk about Laura, or lawsuits, or loss. I talked about a project. I'd just sketched something sustainable for low-income seniors, and someone listened. Really listened. On the walk home, umbrella in hand, I realized something. It wasn't a new beginning. It was a continuation. One I got to write. Betrayal breaks things. But what you build next, that's what defines you. Maybe you've trusted the wrong person. Maybe you've lost more than money. But if you're still standing, you're already halfway to rebuilding. Here's what I learned. Protect your foundations, financial, emotional, legal. Surround yourself with quiet strength, not loud approval. Don't chase revenge. Build resilience. And when you're ready, pass it on. Because someone out there, a kid with a dream, a stranger with quiet courage, a version of who you used to be, is waiting for proof that healing is real, that dignity survives deception, that you can walk away with less and feel more complete. So don't just survive betrayal, outbuild it.